Hello and welcome to Babcock Goobcock, Chapeter 1. So today I took my dog out for a walk, and when I came home, a hawk was murdering a pigeon on my doorstep. That's just the way it goes, right? You go out and you have a good time, and you come home to murder. He took off um, when I came home, and he brought the body with him. So he just left a feathering nest for me to clean up. So that's what happened today, and that's about as much excitement as I had today. I just got done with work, and it is as boring and pointless as usual. Food. What did I eat today? I had crepes, and I do like saying it like the wrong way, the American way, because the French crepes. I don't know if that's even close, but it does sound more like crap. Thin, delicious pancakes. And I grew up on those crepes. It is a good, quick snack or meal, however you want to look at it. I used to be able to, flip them in the pan, but I use the cast iron now. So at my advanced age, I'd probably break a wrist trying to do that. Yeah, those cast iron pans, they weigh a few pounds. I don't think you can do it the one-handed way. You can eat the crepes with a lot of toppings. I personally prefer the strawberry jam and whipped cream. I mean, who doesn't? Doesn't that sound delicious? But I had neither of those in my fridge, so I went with the maple flavored corn syrup, uh, which works. It works in a bind. I know some people grew up, they put sugar on theirs, which, I mean, sugar is always good, but not good for you. But I guess strawberry jam just has as much sugar in it as pure cane sugar. I know the French, they do Nutella, I think, is the preferred topping for their crepes, which I don't know. Nutella is dangerous. You can't just have a little bit of it. You start in a jar and the whole fucking thing is gone in no time. Oh well. So what's going on in crypto world? Well, we know Ethereum is ass, and they're down to about a quarter of their all-time high value. Uh, I don't think it's just the whole crypto crash that did that. I think because they held their value for some time. I just think it's poor performance and being ass. $600-700 gas fees for transfers. It's just not sustainable. I know they're trying to do uh, something about it, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And I think other blockchains are going to move up in that number 2 spot behind Bitcoin, as the highest market cap. I think that's some shoes that have yet to be filled. I know there are smaller chains that have tried, but they don't scale up well. And yeah, we'll have to see what the new king of blockchains will be as soon as the economy recovers and people start putting money back into crypto. Well, on a whole different topic, for the historical event or person, I was reading up on the concept of polyphagia. Oh, the first one sounded bad. We don't want to say that. We don't want to get canceled. Polyphagia, that's how we'll pronounce it, which is also known as hyperphagia, according to Wikipedia. And that's just when you eat unbelievable amounts of food. Now, I can eat unbelievable amounts of food, I think. I can eat a lot, but I try not to. Of course, I try to make one meal a day, a salad, a healthy salad, uh, just raw vegetables and whatnot. But if given the opportunity, I can eat 2 burritos. I can eat big ass steak. The really interesting thing about reading up on this was that there were two people, and they were contemporary. They were at the same time on the same continent with similar fates, which was really fascinating to me. The first one is Tarare or Tarare. I don't know how you would say it in French. I'm sure somebody will correct me down the line because I'm butchering all these French words, but I make no pretense of speaking French, so please bear with me. Tarare was a French guy. He was underweight despite the amount of food that he would consume, and he literally was eating his family out of the house. Like that your dad would say when you were a teenager, right? You come home from school and you drink that half gallon of milk in one gulp. You eat a whole loaf of sandwich bread, and your dad would probably say that you're eating the family out of the house. But in this case, it wasn't like an actual thing. Because, back then they had 10 kids, and if one of them eats the same amount as 10 or 15 people per sitting, you're going to go broke pretty quick. So Tarari was kicked out of his house, and he did what people still do today when they're in dire circumstances in the US. He joined the army. For the First Coalition War, he joined the French Revolutionary side. And they found pretty quickly, they found out about his condition, and they were interested, but they were also very practical. They tried to find a military use for it. So they had this idea that he would swallow messages and make him a dispatch runner, and he would cross enemy lines with this sensitive information in his belly. And then they did a test. They put a note in a wooden box and fed it to him. And I guess he ate it and shit it out. And yeah, that worked. That worked out. So they made him a dispatch runner, and they sent him across enemy lines. And I think he was taken prisoner like immediately. I don't know if it was his first runner or whatnot, or if they actually got to make use of this, but he was taken prisoner and spent his time in a hospital because they were really interested in his condition, because he ate the equivalent amount of food as 15 people would per sitting. And they were feeding him like cow's lungs and livers, and they fed him by the wheelbarrow. That's how much he ate. He ate everything. And I think that's what the polyphagia, the hyperphagia means, you eat a lot, but polyphagia means you eat everything. So they would feed him like live cats and all kinds of shit. He would eat live eels and just ridiculous amounts of meat. And they put him in the hospital, and apparently he was eating corpses in the morgue too, which I guess is better than eating live people. But he also did that. I shouldn't say that, there's no proof. But another patient, a live child, disappeared. And they concluded that he had eaten the child, and they just chased him out of the hospital. And I think he continued his life as like a sideshow later on. He made a living off of his enormous appetite, but I think the story just kind of ends there. And at the same time in Poland, there was a guy named Charles Domerc, or Domery. He was a Polish national that was voluntarily or was pressed into service in the Prussian army. And this was the same war, same time, same war. Two people with this unusual condition. He found in the Prussian army that he didn't get fed enough. I think their supply situation was a little bit different, and he couldn't get enough food. So I don't know if his contract was up and he left, or if he deserted, but he did join France. He wasn't infantry though. He was made a sailor on a ship, and he was not popular there because one of his fellow sailors got a leg shot off with a cannonball in a battle, and he picked up the leg and started frenetically eating it until they could wrestle it away from him. Um, I think they lost that battle against English, British, UK Navy, Royal Navy, and he was made a prisoner of war and sent to Liverpool, where scientists from Edinburgh came to observe him and do all kinds of tests, medical tests, not for military use. They were just interested in how Charles could eat this much fucking food. So yeah, he's a prisoner of war, and they have a record of him eating 16 pounds of food over 2 meals, like in one day, like lunch and dinner, or breakfast and lunch. And they fed him all kinds of meat. They even fed him candlesticks. And no, not candlesticks, the actual candles. And I don't know if they made them differently back then, but I suppose they're edible. And so he ate 16 pounds of food and drank 4 bottles of wine. And he didn't piss, he didn't shit, he didn't vomit. He just ate it and happily went on with his day. They wanted to, examine him, and they looked down his throat, and it was just a gaping hole down in the abyss. Actually, I do know what happened to the first guy, the Terraria guy. He died, and they did not want to autopsy him because he rotted like instantly. But they didn't do an endoscopy because that didn't exist. But they did look down in his belly, and it was just full of pus and ulcers, and yeah, he was decrepit, so they didn't want to deal with him. But back to Charles, yeah, they did all these tests with him, but then the information stops. We don't know what happened to him, if he died a prisoner of war or if he was released and went about his business, but that's all that's known. And I could really see this being like a Hollywood or a Netflix movie. I would love to see the two parallel fates of these guys in this big war. Yeah, that would be a really interesting thing. You would have to take some artistic liberties, obviously. But yeah, I would watch that for sure. I would watch that for sure. So what's going on in the world of sports? We got the World Cup of soccer coming up, the FIFA World Cup, and it's being held in Qatar this time. And I'm not going to watch it. It's too different. They're normally they play the World Cup in July. It's a summer thing to me. Like football is a fall thing. Hockey and basketball is a winter spring thing. And yeah, it just feels too different to start playing it in November. And I get why. It's like 120 degrees in Qatar during those summer months, so they have to play it in November. And they're doing all kinds of shit, artificial clouds, and yeah, just to try to have a successful cup there. But that's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that isn't Qatar like a total dictatorship where foreign laborers are building these stadiums under horrible conditions? Yeah, and I think they have played it off as, this is just growing pains. We're working towards treating our labor force better, but we're still going to do this World Cup. Yeah, I think the laborers are from like Bangladesh and Pakistan, and they don't have the best conditions there. They have their passports confiscated, and they can't leave. And that's how they are building these major stadiums. And Qatar is like a really, really small peninsula, or a protrusion of the Arab peninsula. And they're holding a World Cup there, which is, normally you would have it in Germany or Italy with existing stadiums. It's a big country with different regions. And this thing is like the size of Manhattan or something like that. It's insane. And I don't think anybody who follows the selection process or the bid process thinks that this is not due to corruption. They got paid to vote for Qatar as the host country. It's a given. And I agree with the notion that the World Cup of soccer cannot be purely a European or South American affair. That's, you can't, you got to spread it out. And they've tried. They did South Africa, which is still, not like holding it in Nigeria or Kenya, but I guess they have the best infrastructure and the most white people. I think that was a big factor for that bid. They're doing, yeah, it's Africa, but it's kind of European. Oh, they're also talking about expanding the World Cup to 48 teams, which is crazy. I mean, it's more inclusive, but you already have with the 32 team format that they have, you already have like countries that have no business playing with, in the group stage. They'll lose 8-0, and Saudi Arabia was one of those once upon a time. Other small countries have fared better, but it's just, if you add 48 teams, you're going to have just insane blow-ups, like pitting Portugal or Belgium against some Lilliput country that's going to get absolutely destroyed. Is that in anybody's best interest to watch? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. It's the first World Cup in the wintertime. Like I said, I don't, I'm not going to say I'm not going to watch it. There are still good matchups. And, normally the World Cup is great because it doesn't collide with any of my other sports interests. And I'm interested in all sports. I don't do the bullshit like soccer is for pussies and football is just a bunch of people running into a pile head first. No, I like and I appreciate all sports, team sports, individual sports. I grew up on sports, I grew up competitive. You made a sport out of everything. You find a wiffle ball and a hockey stick, and you got a game of golf going in your yard. You ever play that beer speed game where you throw a frisbee at a bottle on top of a PVC pole? Yeah, we did stuff like that when I was a kid. We came up with games like that, but not with the beer, obviously, but you get the gist. So I do appreciate all sports, but this time it will collide with the NFL season. And I think I will pick the NFL over the World Cup, even the big matchups. I would watch my NFL games over that. Yeah, so I can't wait until they award the 2026 World Cup and that it's a normal one, like in Argentina, or I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's China or some other major emerging power. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But yeah, can I get one more classic in? Mexico, Italy, England, even. Yeah. Qatar, I mean, it is a dictatorship, but at least they don't pretend that they're not. They had the World Cup in Russia, or the Olympics in Russia. They had both the World Cup and Olympics in Russia, didn't they? Either way, at that time, I think people were still kind of fooled that Russia was still a semi-democracy. Yeah, money talks. Money talks. All right, let's talk about a country. We'll talk about Finland today. Finland, what do we know about Finland? I've been there. I've been both to the cities and I've been inland. It is a beautiful place. It is. It's like a land of lakes type thing. I don't think it is mountainous anywhere in Finland, not even up north. I think it's flat, heavily wooded, and lakes and rivers everywhere. Flat but beautiful. Helsinki is a neat city. I've only been in wintertime, but that's beautiful as well. You have that winter beauty. But architecturally, Helsinki is a nice town. One thing that's has struck me about Finland is they have manly qualities, but no machismo. I don't. The dudes do what dudes are supposed to do. They're very um, manly, but they don't brag about it like you would see in Italy or Mexico or Spain. You know, that Latin thing where you have to overprove your masculinity. I think the Finnish guys are very masculine, more so than any other Nordic country, but they don't talk about it. They just do what they're supposed to do. That's my impression, at least. But they also have the biggest discrepancy, and this is a personal observation. They have a big discrepancy between men and women in how, in appearance. They have beautiful women. The guys, not so much. So women are beautiful. Guys are a little bit rougher, which pretty much means that every Finnish couple consists of a guy dating up and a woman dating down, right? Isn't that how that works? Uh, yeah, and there's no better example than their government right now. The Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, I don't know how you say it. She's a fox. She's a good looking lady. While the president, Sauli Niinistö, I hope I said that right. There's two I's, Niinistö. I think you if there's two uh, vowels in a row, you say it long. He is not the guy. So Prime Minister, kind of an old decrepit man as a president. So that really highlights that observation. Again, this is not science, this is an observation about the Finnish people. And like in Italy, you say the Italian people are beautiful, you know, they're the men are well dressed, and so are the women, and they are thin and fit. And I don't know how true that is up in the, you know, once you get up in the ages, because I aren't the nonnas and the, is that how you say it? Nonna? And I don't know how you say grandpa in Italian. I don't know. Anyway, I mean, they put on some girth with age. But I think the younger people stay fit, not necessarily because they cook their food better than we do here in America, you know, more natural ingredients. They take more time with the food, and it's not all processed and whatnot. But I think it's the serving size that's the difference. You know, they eat food with all the olive oil. You know, it's high amount of fat, and the gabagool. I know, but all the meats, the cured meats with the fat and whatnot, they eat that stuff. They just don't eat a heaping plate of it. So it's more a thing of more a question of moderation than anything else. And I think that's how people stay fit and better looking for a long time. And yeah. Anyway, so you would say the Italian people are beautiful. You would say Swedish people are beautiful. You know, you would say the whole people. But in Finland, women are beautiful. The guys, not as much. Well, overall, what do we know about Finland? It's, like we said, beautiful nature. People are happy there, apparently, according to surveys. Finland is the happiest country on earth. And I don't remember who, but somebody had a good take on it. They said, well, that's because every sad person kills themselves. And that's a unique take on that, huh? Yeah, of course you're going to get high marks if everybody who would give a lower mark if they off themselves before the survey, you're going to appear happier. And I think, you know, at least in my mind, Finland was one of those countries, you know, like Japan, where people just off themselves left and right. You know, it's a common way to go. So I don't know. I don't know. They say they're happy. They have a high standard of living, and yeah, good schooling, good education, good healthcare. Maybe they are the happiest people on earth. What is going on in the world? COVID is on the rise again. I heard there was something like a fivefold increase of severe cases. Oh, we're sick of COVID. We can't be bothered with it anymore. Even if it like really, really flared up and they try to impose mandates, I don't think anybody would go for it. I think like we can't be past 2020 and 2021 and then most of 2022 and then restart the mandates. Like people would just not go for it. Nobody's wearing masks anymore. I mean, I'm here in San Diego, which is supposed to be one of the places that adhered better to the mandates than other places, and 99% of the people are not wearing masks currently. You will see the occasional older lady at the grocery store who still wears a mask, or employees even, but overall, like nobody wears masks. Nobody. So it's not surprising that it flares up. We just can't be bothered with it anymore. That's the thing. And they were talking about the I don't know what it was called. There was some kind of a monkey virus, ape virus, an up and comer, but they don't think that one will flare up into a pandemic. But they started working on vaccines for that quickly. Because you imagine going back to back COVID and then you get like monkeypox. God, the whole world would be in disarray more so than during the first pandemic. So fingers crossed, monkeypox is not a new thing. Oh, what else? Herschel Walker, the old NFL player, is a Republican frontrunner in the state of Georgia. And he got himself into trouble that he did not have to get into. Because what did he do? He lied that he was in law enforcement at some point. And, I don't know if it was like as a deputy sheriff or a sheriff's volunteer or whatever. But no law enforcement agency was able to confirm this, and they actually denied it. The ones that he claimed that they had never been involved with him in any capacity. And that's like, if you're an all-pro NFL player, you're a college Heisman Trophy winner, you don't need to make shit like that up. You don't need to say you're in law enforcement. And I think he studied criminal justice in college, and he somehow spun off of that he was an active member of law enforcement to help his political run. And you don't need to do that. You're Herschel Walker. You're known all over America. And the saddest thing is like even Steven Seagal or like Doug the Bounty Hunter is more truthful than you now, Herschel. You understand? Even the Doug the Bounty Hunter that shows up with a paintball gun is more law enforcement than you. And that's just embarrassing. He was involved in that blockbuster Viking trades that made the Cowboys get a shitload of draft picks and literally like reboot their whole franchise. That was one trade for Herschel Walker. It's one of the most talked about trades in NFL history. He's known. You don't need to make up a non-impressive thing like I'm a volunteer deputy sheriff. You don't need to make that up, especially not in the age where you can look everything up on the internet. That's ridiculous. But I think, I can kind of identify with that. It's one of those things where it's like you have to jump the shark. You have to be an edgelord because you think that like your stories are not interesting or whatnot. And I think for a politician, that's like amplified. You feel like the story you have to tell is not enough. It's not exciting enough. And that's just an internal insecurity. Like, and I used to add a little spice to some stories just for that reason, but it's okay. For example, I was working at this place and I would drive on the interstate to get there. That was my commute. And one day I saw one of those big automotive hauling semis, whatever they're called, with the two ramps, and they load cars on them and take smaller cars from point A to point B, and one of those had tipped over at an on ramp, and there was, I think, 3 or 4 cars, BMWs, strewn along the. I can't talk. Were spilled out all across the on ramp, and I got to work and I tell the story. But for some reason, I said, it was a dozen cars, a dozen Beamers just laying around, and I didn't have to say that. It made no difference in the story. Like, am I going to say, yeah, that guy is in no trouble at all because there was only 4 cars? Of course, he's going to be in major trouble, whether it's 4 BMWs or 12. You don't have to add that to the story, but you have that doubt in the back of your head that, yeah, 3 cars, no big deal. So I went with 12, but unfortunately, other people commute the same route as I do, and they're like, "What? No, there was like 3 cars." So had I not said that and told the story, we would just have talked about it. And I think with age, the need to do that really lessens. I don't have to do that. I'll just tell the story to its truest extent, and if you're interested, fine. If you're not, it's no sweat off my back. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But maybe, and Herschel Walker is still at least 20 years older than me. And maybe it's just the pressure of politics that you have to add to your stories. But you can Google anything. He should know that somebody will look him up, especially, his opponents will try and dig up any lies, any scandals and whatnot. That's what they'll go for. Yeah, and that's another thing with politicians. People don't want politicians for politician positions. It's this whole anti-Washington, anti-Capitol thing. And that makes no sense to me. Do you want a gardener to be a politician because they never did politics before? It's not a strength in my book, because a politician is a profession like anything else. You should be better at it with experience. You would have amassed more knowledge. It takes a fair bit of diplomacy and oratory skills, and you should just be better with experience. Now, with the American system, with the special interest and the super PACs, that's the real hindrance. But when somebody starts to gain momentum, somebody who's not a politician, they're no different. They're still influenced by that kind of stuff. It's, special interest will get to you no matter who you are. So I wonder how long people are going to fall for that rhetoric of running on a non-politician ticket. I'm gonna take it to Washington. I'm gonna show those politicians who's boss. Like the whole distancing yourself from being a politician when you're trying to be a politician. It's kind of ridiculous in my book. What else? Oh yeah, we got the war in the Ukraine. And I don't know, are you still interested? I'm very interested. But are you interested in the war? I look at maps, I follow troop movements, I look at the front line. And, it kind of makes me wonder, what did we do that in World War II? Because there's more stuff going on right now. We have more access to information and we have a shorter attention span. In World War II, were people interested in the war for all 6 years? Was that were you occupied with it daily? You're reading up on it, you're following the maps and where the warships are and all that stuff. Did people do that? Or more recently, like Vietnam, was it like that? Even in the 60s and 70s? Or was it, okay, so today people put the Ukraine flag on their social media and they get lambasted oh, that's all you're going to do. Support goes a long way, but was there an equivalent of that during the Vietnam War? Did you go to one protest and then you never talked about it again? I'm curious to know. I think in World War II, since the whole world was involved and you re-geared entire economies for the war effort, and yeah, big parts of the world were had their countrymen deployed. You had your father, son, uncle, whatever, was off to war, so you have more of an incentive to follow it. And the war in the Ukraine, it has, I mean, it's a familiar war to the Western world, and there is criticism. Like there are wars all the time that we don't even know about or give a shit about in Africa, or to a lesser extent in Asia. And they say, well, it's white people caring about white people, and there's definitely a point to that. We are definitely way more interested in this conflict because it hits closer to home in the Western world, and we see it as more of a tragedy. But that's just the thing. We do care a lot more about this war. But all the white people thing aside, it's two major countries that are like at full scale war with each other in Europe, something that we thought would never happen again. And that's it. Okay, that's what you should take from this war, that there will never be world peace. Don't be stupid. World War I was called the war to end all wars. And how did that work out? That did not work out. They had a sequel. They had a box office hit, a blockbuster sequel. So yeah, and before the invasion of the Crimea, you as a European, you could not fathom a large-scale war in Europe, or any war, for that matter. It just wasn't on the map. No pun intended. But yet it happened. So what can we learn from this? That the mechanics of war are rich people sending poor people to fight for their interests. Forget about religion and all that stuff. Historically and contemporary, it is rich people sending poor people to fight for their interests, and that will never change. That will never change. So there will always be wars. And hope, when I was a kid in the 80s, and we had all these fluffy kindergarten and school teachers wearing a burlap sack and talking about world peace. I had hippie teachers, but God, were they wrong? They just thought that this would never happen again, but obviously it did, and it will keep on happening in the first world and the third world. And whatever happened to the second world? You remember the second world? I just think that was too insulting to people. I think the second world countries were like Poland and Yugoslavia. They were, developed to a certain standard, but not quite as high as the first world and not as bad as the third world. But I think it was just really offensive to call a country a second world country. So they just got rid of it, because you never hear, it's the second world problems. You don't hear that. There's third world problems and first world problems. And they just got rid of the middle because it just rubbed the countries that actually are second world countries the wrong way. And I mean, you could look at Russia, or even some countries on the Balkans today, where city folks are on par with any other major city in the world. They're up to snuff. But then in the countryside, they're still shitting in an outhouse, and they might not have running water. You know what I mean? And that's the difference between, say, an American farmer. They got the internet, and they got running water and toilets, and they got all the stuff that city folks have, for the most part. So the rural and the urban population in America, they're way less removed than in other countries. And I think that's the major difference. So you could say parts of Russia is first world and parts are second world. But you can't say second world anymore because they got rid of it. I don't know when. I'll have to look that up. Oh, well, I'm still interested in the war, I still think that it's something that I will follow at the duration of the conflict and be interested in. I can, I'm not saying the Ukraine is a perfect place but they are the victim of aggression. And in wars, we tend to side with the victim. Not when it's America. when we're the aggressor, we side with us. And it's all semantics. It's all semantics and propaganda. And nobody's better at propaganda than the Russians. They have a long history of disinformation and angling things to sound like things are what they aren't, but they are. And I don't think in the U.S. the freedom of speech is still so strong that we can see through bullshit. And you will have two sides to every coin still. I know a lot of brave civilians in Russia have protested the war. They have shown their disgust with it, and then they've been poisoned or imprisoned. That's the Russian way of dealing with it. I don't think you could get away with that on a large scale in the U.S. I don't think so. But yeah, so at least the war is scaled down from what it looked like it was going to be in the beginning. It just looked like the Ukraine was going to be overrun from east to west, and that the whole country was going to cease to exist. Now it's a Donbass battle, and I do think that we are a little naive to how the war is really going. I think there's some truth to that. I think the Russians are doing better, and all the news that are published with glee that this colonel or this general died, and they have a head count. We in the West keep a head count of high Russian officers, which is it's kind of bizarre to joyfully publish when somebody dies. But yeah, with the social media coverage, this is so different. And it's not like the Middle Eastern war on ISIS, because that was just grotesque. The social media was grotesque. The Ukrainians, at least, are using social media to show that they're in high spirits. They're dancing, they're singing, they're posting TikToks and puns and all kinds of stuff. So it's a little bit more uplifting than anything we have seen before. But you remember when it was a revolutionary thing that media was embedded with combat troops? Now with their phone, everybody is embedded, and you can see a battle live. I'm sure you can watch somebody bum rushing the steel plants in Mariupol. I bet you can watch that live, which is bizarre, because war footage to us is what you see on Netflix and World War II documentaries. It's carefully curated video clips, and they have searched the world around and came up with something that's not before seen. And it's fascinating. It's not really cool or awesome, but it is fascinating. All right. Well, that about does it for this episode of Babcock Goobcock, and thanks for listening.